Welcome to Conversations for Our Time, podcast number 16 with the Quiet Sun team, George and John. Today we're going to pick up from where we left off. We are really bringing in the cutting edge information on regenerative permaculture practices, mixing it up with spirituality because everything is spiritual. You know, it says it in the word spiritual. Spirit you all. And the idea is to really connect with nature, observe her, see the lessons that she brings into our lives when growing food, or just life in general. You know, I can tell you for a fact that nature is a living, breathing being, and she wants us to bring her into our lives and to be an expression of her, because she will give us everything in abundance when we work with her. And we are remembering, right? We are remembering nature. We are remembering our ancestors, how they used to live, and just honoring them and Mother Nature, because they knew so much more in some ways than we do now. And it's time to learn from the past mistakes and really listen to the messages that our ancestors and past civilizations were trying to bring forth to us. They left messages to us to pre-warn us of possible hard times ahead, so that we can get through it. So this will be part 6 in the mini series, and I'm really looking forward to it. How you doing, John?
Yeah, good, George. Great introduction. Yeah, man. Just really, hit home everything you said, and this word magic as well. I heard this just now, actually. Impossible.
I'm possible.
I'm possible. Yeah, great, right. So it is. There's a lot of illusion, especially when it comes to human beings' ability to be able to tap into the natural world.
Yes.
And I think we talked about this last podcast about the gut, and the gut is I spoke about this in a webinar I did yesterday. The gut is our protector, more than just food, right? But actually the gut is the intuitive part of our being. It's just really interesting that we're entering this time where there's so much information out there that it can become really overwhelming and confusing and conflicting. And I've seen, in the circles that we tread, you kind of come across people that have kind of lost it, because they've gone down the rabbit hole too far. And we experience this, right, to a degree. So what do you do around yourself? And so this is really why we're doing what we're doing, right, George, is because we need to both be rooted firmly in the ground, but also be flexible enough to sway with the elements. So plants are a great teacher. They are adaptable, they're resilient, they're evolving constantly. And I think, this attack on the food system is really primarily an attack on our gut, an attack on our intuition, just like they've attacked the other chakras, right? But so it's really important that we're doing this, and hopefully people can become inspired from it all. So I'm learning every day, George. I know you are as well. And there are some really inspiring and, revolutionary things happening right now in our society that none of us are aware of. So yeah, me and Monica were talking early this morning. We were like just about to chant, and it's all about raising your vibration. So we might raise our vibration, and then people come into our environment that may kind of try and bring us down. But the purpose of this is to kind of test us, right? And I just consider life to be a training ground to a degree, one aspect of it. And that's to build up this resilience. In Buddhism, another word for Buddha or meaning for Buddha is one who can endure, so enduring all these times is really difficult. So it's great that we can have these chats and hopefully other people connect with it.
Well, I think so too. I think, some people say that this earth isn't a school, and I think it is very much a school. It is there to, everything is set out the way that it is so that we can learn and grow. And just because it gets a little bit tough, we start pointing the fingers,
Mm.
and we forget to learn and we forget to grow and we forget to heal. And there are times that we've gone too far down in the rabbit hole. We know what's going on, but we've got to really start healing. We really got to start doing the introspective work. We really got to start balancing our brain. And there's only the best activity in the world to do to balance your brain is to work with nature, is to grow food, get your hands in the soil, because the left side of the brain is the masculine, where you stay active and you physically growing food, and the right side of the brain is the feminine. It's very much nature, and it just brings about balance within you, and then your solutions will come. You can't find solutions down that rabbit hole. And what best to balance your brain with? Growing food, growing nature,
Mm.
working with nature and cleaning your body, decalcifying the pineal gland as you lessen and lessen the chemicals going into your body, and perhaps fasting. And nature has all the answers, doesn't she?
It does. And the greatest thing about nature is that we're born from nature and we will die into nature. And this in between phase is us trying to, in my opinion, come to terms with and accept that and then embrace it.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing is many people can't quite even get to the accepting stage. But obviously that's part of their path, and it doesn't mean they're any better or any worse than us. It just means that's their karma, that's their purpose. But the greatest thing is that I have interactions with many people that are kind of outside of my circle of thought and feeling, but these people, like my family, I'm still very connected. I've got a very different opinion to my family, like literally everyone. But I still have this karmic connection to them. And I see part of my purpose on a grander scale is that I'm planting seeds in these people's lives. And without kind of
Yes.
saying I'm, special or anything like that. But when you grow up like we do and you don't feel like you haven't got a place in this kind of society that just seems a little bit conflicted, and it's very difficult, and then you go through this period of like feeling all this information and becoming overwhelmed. And whether you find spirituality or growing food or, as long as it's about connection to the cosmic scale, really feeling like we're interconnected with everything. And once you realize that, you start to see these synchronicities in life, and you start to realize the things that you may have been doing before that are conflicting with this integral destiny that you have. So yeah, it's just fundamental, isn't it, to be on this journey and go through the pain. And this is what nature does. Nature is evolving. It's it's put up against the elements, but it always finds a way. And even if we toxify the soil, nature's always going to find a way. Some of the first things to grow outside of Chernobyl were sunflowers. And sunflowers are really good at absorbing heavy metals like uranium, etc. So, yeah, the parallels are quite magical, really, with our lives and nature.
Exactly, I think so, and exactly. There's always something to learn every single day. If we can just learn to just to be one with nature, and the best way to do that is to keep learning and keep growing food. If people, the more people that can go off grid, the better. Or start wherever you are. I don't have a place to grow food next season, next growing season, but nature is telling me to grow food in grow bags and learn more that way. And if that's all I can do, then that's all I can do. But it's still good to get the knowledge, get the knowledge, get the information, prepare yourself, as nature will prepare us to one day to go off grid. And that's the end goal, really. But so picking up from where we were talking about last week, we were talking very much about the compost types. We got into vermicomposting using worms. What we're going to do? Yeah, we were talked about Johnson Soup bio reactor. Um, you were talking about, John, making your own lab and EM, because you wanted to talk a bit more about that on this one. And then if you go into a bit more about worm composting in windrows on a large scale, you've got the bokashi, you've got the hugelkotels, or the earth mounds, just all the pros and cons and the best ways to go around about any of these processes involved. Because I remember we was just tops it all, probably trumps it all. But yeah, the floor is yours with that.
Cool. Thanks, man. So, yeah, let's start with lab. So lactobacillus. There are many lactis bacilluses, but this particular one you can get from a number of different kind of sources. But the easiest one and the most available to people is rice. So it's rice washed water.
Yes.
So if you're cooking rice, preferably organic if you can get it, wash your rice in water as you would normally do. And instead of tipping it out, you tip it into a glass container, preferably a wide mouth glass container. I use like 2 litre ones. You can find them anywhere. A lot of people like put big candles in these types of things, so hopefully people know what I mean. And then you leave that to sit there for like 7 days. And then what you then want to do is mix it with milk. And then you leave it for a little while longer. So you've got to wait. In that first period, you need to wait until it starts to smell quite sweet. So it kind of has this sweet smell to it. And you always cover it. So you always want to cover it with a breathable fabric. So you can use like a paper kitchen towel, something like that. And this just allows the lactobacillus to start kind of multiplying. Then you mix it with milk, again, preferably organic milk. And then you'll leave that for a further 7 to 10 days. It all depends on room temperature and stuff. And then what you'll find is that milk and the lab or the rice washed water would then have separated into curds and whey. Yeah, so the curd will be on the top. So you can actually take that off, put that aside. What I tend to do is I take off the curds and I strain the water back into the container. Make sure you get all the bits out, and then that's your lab. So that's lactobacillus in water. And then you can use that by diluting it. And what lab is like a pathogen suppressant. So you can use it in all sorts of ways. So you can use it as like a soil soak or a foliar spray. You can even drink it, because we naturally have lactobacillus in our gut. So it's great for drinking as well. And you want to store it in a fridge. And as long as it's kept to that kind of temperature, it will keep for a while, probably a month or so. And yeah, so they use this in pig farms. They use it in like poultry farms as well, to suppress pathogens from the manure that they create.
Okay.
You can also use it in compost. So if you're doing hot compost, I didn't have a chance to make lab because, I got a bit busy. But so when you make a hot compost, we talked about this before, is that as it gets hot, the carbon and the nitrogen gas off. So you can actually use lab, which is also an ingredient of EM, to first of all stop it gassing off so much so you lose less volume, but also you can use it as a pathogen suppressant, so you don't have to turn the hot compost as much. So that's lab. EM, something I kind of came across when I was doing my regenerative soil course. So EM is effective microbes. It was discovered by a guy called Dr. Higa, who's like a Japanese scientist. And he managed to isolate these particular microbes that naturally, appear in nature. And although there's a consortium of them, most people don't know what they are, but they know that there's kind of two main ones.
Right. Okay.
So there's three. You have streptomyces. You also have lactobacillus, and then you have one called PNSB. So they all perform a different function. But again, they are, so when you make EM, you can make it straight from the bottle, so you can buy it. And that just comes in a litre bottle. So you can use that, you can dilute it and then put it on your plants. The thing is with that is if you use it straight away, you don't know how long it's been sitting there since they made it. And obviously because they're living microbes, a lot of them can deteriorate. So what we can do to promote this or to extend it is we can mix the EM with water and molasses, unsulfured organic molasses, and a thing called bioceramic powder or sea salt or ocean minerals. So the molasses act as a food for the EM to feed on. You use the water to kind of dilute it to a degree, because molasses is very thick, so you kind of need to dilute that that's one purpose.
Yeah.
And the bioceramic powder or the salt extends the life of it. Yeah, so obviously we use salt to preserve stuff, don't we?
Yeah.
Works in a similar way.
Yeah.
So if you're making 5 litres of this, you want to do 20 parts water. The ingredients are, if it's 5 litres, you want to do 227 mils of EM, 227 mils of molasses, about 4.7 or 4.7 something litres of water, and 2 teaspoons of bioceramic powder or salt or ocean minerals. And then you mix it up, you put it in a bottle. The bottle needs to have a lid that allows the bottle to become airtight. Once I've filled it up, I tend to squeeze the bottle so the liquid comes right to the rim, and then I put it on, and that way I know there's no air in it, because it needs to be an anaerobic process. And that anaerobic process will then drop the pH down to below 5, below 4, preferably 3.5. And you allow it to ferment between 7 and 10 days. Again, depending on the temperature, the ambient temperature. I've let mine go for like 3 weeks before. I know people have just let them go for ages. And so it's ready by the fact, if you're using, like I use these 5 litre containers that I get, say like Hebridean seaweed in, liquid seaweed, which are like these plastic, quite soft plastic, that will actually swell as the process. So you tend to find that sometimes these bottles get a little bit deformed. You can use harder plastic, like jerry cans. You have these like petrol cans.
Familiar with them. Yeah.
So after 7 to 10 days, leave it a bit longer, especially in temperate zones, and undo it. And if it smells like the original EM that you bought smells, it's okay. You've got to test the pH. So you can use a bit of litmus paper. It should be accurate enough, and you'll be able to tell. As I said, 3.5 is ideal. And then you can use the EM as a soil soak, as a foliar spray. There's even EM you can buy to drink. So it's called EM Pro.
Okay.
And they're bacteria that we are going to have in our gut anyway. And this is the thing about the soil and the gut. They are inextricably linked. There's a very deep connection. You think, we've been eating from the soil for however long humanity has been eating food from the ground, which, depending on what sources you've got, is very different, right? But so we have this very long evolutionary connection to the soil. And
they work very much the same way.
Exactly. And we do, look at like calcium, for instance. If plants haven't got calcium, they have weak cell walls. We don't have enough calcium. We have weak bones. It's like the structure.
Yeah.
You can even tell with iron. Iron is like hemoglobin, which is red, right? In certain legumes, or most legumes, when you have good root nodulation, which are the bits that grow on the roots that fix nitrogen, when it's really good, you can see a red tinge to it. That's iron. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And these connections will continue to go. So the microbes are the central foundation of all life on this planet. Without microbes, we wouldn't be alive. We're more microbe than we are human cells.
Yeah.
That rather than saying we're human, we're actually an ecosystem in a human shell.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%.
But very high functioning. Yeah. So, yeah, man. So, vermicompost. So linking vermicompost to EM, worms are amazing digesters of material, and they produce this really beautiful, what they call black gold, which is called vermicompost. You can also get like liquid from this manure that they produce as well, and castings. These are all like slightly different parts of the process. And you can farm these in all sorts of different ways. I don't know whether we spoke about this last time, but I learned recently that I actually make it as simple as possible. So rather than building all these tiered structured worm bins or worm homes, they're
Yeah,
great
yeah,
because they're practical in a way that you start off at the bottom and then you feed them from the top. So they go up in search of the food, and it means that you can then take that bottom tray out and harvest the castings.
that's right. You did go into very much into detail in the vermicomposting.
Yeah, cool. So
Yeah,
yeah, so but if you go simple, just do it in a box, because in the wild, these compost worms live on the surface, so kind of making them go
yeah.
up isn't necessarily natural. But it's up to everyone to do how they want. So the greatest thing about the worm compost, or the vermicompost, is in their gut they produce PNSB, which is the purple non-sulfur bacteria, and that is part of EM. So you can actually make your own EM by taking these castings, running water through it, and that stuff that you get out of those castings will have PNSB in it. So we can become alchemists if we just understand how nature works, and you don't have to pay money out for EM.
A lot of the stuff we can do on our own. We've got the time and space to do it,
Mm,
and if we're willing to learn to do it, and absolutely we can do these things, on our own. I remember also a while back you was also talking about worm composting in windrows on a
yeah,
large scale. If
yeah,
you just go into more detail, I think you did that on one of your webinars, but if you go into
mm.
detail with that,
Yeah, sure. So I mean, it's the same process, really. The thing with windrows is you need machinery. Um, so you can they tend to do this on like large scales. There's not that many people that do it because they tend to have them in troughs.
right?
But
Okay,
it's a little bit more natural because you're basically allowing the worms to escape if they want to. So they're not going to stick around
yeah,
unless their food source is there. And it's really simple. You just kind of build these like mounds, which are they can be quite high, but yeah, again, you want to kind of try and replicate nature as much as possible. And they're just going to go through all the organic matter. So you can, the only thing with windrows is it would be quite difficult to separate the castings to a degree because it's such a mass scale. Um, but you know, you can kind of start them from quite small mounds and over time kind of build it up. If
yeah,
that makes sense. Um,
yeah,
it's certainly more natural, but yeah, as I said, so not many people are going to end up doing that because it takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication, and a lot of time.
yeah.
I would just suggest getting a box like 3 foot by 4 foot and just starting off with that, and just using your kitchen scraps.
It's probably the most simple. You're right, though, in saying that it's just the most simple way. Just do it how nature would do it,
Mm.
and just keep it simple. We can also quickly go into a bit of bokashi,
Yeah,
if you learned anything else since the last time we talked about that, and Hugo Cultures, or earth mounds.
yeah, sure. So, Bokashi, Japanese form of composting. And again, so with Bokashi, you can do it in a bucket. They sell buckets online. You can buy the inoculated bran that you need. So you're basically, the bran is like a substrate. You mix the bran with your food, and you can mix it with bones, with meat. But again, the magic comes in with the EM. it's the EM that's going to break down all that matter.
Yeah.
The EM can break down the bones, and the Bokashi bran is like a substrate for the EM to kind of exist in. And then once you've done that process, you leave it to sit. You keep the it's again, it's an anaerobic process. You leave it to sit there for like 7 to 14 days, and then you can go into your garden and put it in a hole. You leave it for another 14 days. I think it's 2 weeks to 3 weeks, and then you can plant on it. And it's just going to be amazing stuff. It's a really quick way to compost because it's done through a very aggressive decomposition process. Something new I've learned about Bokashi is you can also mix it with biochar. So this
Okay. Right.
yeah. So it's again, it's another way. There's a thing called Bokashi balls as well. A friend of mine is actually going to. I met him recently. He's going to start mixing Bokashi with biochar, putting it into like bags, and putting it in rivers to basically clean up toxins from rivers.
Wow. Yes.
So
Yeah.
like he's a really cool guy actually. I met him on the course I did, and
Okay.
we can swap in ideas and stuff. And he's very much on our level, but really cool guy. Just got some really cool ideas about and he's hooked me up with a few different people that I'm probably going to interview at some point at the end of this year, beginning of next year. Who
Excellent.
really cool things. One's got he makes wine from a biodynamic vineyard. And another guy who builds like timber frame houses. So, who makes a lot of charcoal on his land as well. So, yeah, lots of stuff to think in the future. And then
Yeah. Sure.
quickly, probably talk about hugelkulturs. So, hugelkultur or a mound, earth mounds, it has dual functions. It makes compost and it also grows food. So you can get decomposed logs, clean ones, preferably hardwood, because the mound will last longer. You put the logs down, and then you want to put maybe good soil and good compost between the logs, and then you want to put some sticks across that, and then you keep piling it up, keep piling stuff on it, as long as it's clean and organic material. You keep piling that up until it forms a mound. So you can use wood chips. You can basically use all sorts of stuff. You don't want to use like things that might attract things like rats, because you don't want rats living in there.
Of
And
course. Yeah.
you want to fill all the holes so there's less chance of those types of animals going in there. Just because you don't want rat shit in or babies or anything like that.
Yeah. Of course.
And then, best time to make those is really in autumn, because what will start happening is as those logs decompose, you're going to start getting mycelium growth, or the saprophytic fungi that will start decomposing those logs. If you live in an area that's prone to flooding, or if you're on a slope, you want to dig down to put those logs in, because what you don't want to have is the water capturing it and it all just disappearing.
Yeah.
So you can dig down 12 inches, 18 inches. I've done them on the surface, and I've also started one that's down about 18 inches. And that's the hugelkultur, and then you can plant on top of it. And the great thing about it is that will probably last about 7 to 8 years. And as the logs decompose, they create heat. So if you've got this heated mound, you can grow stuff in there that you might not be able to grow anywhere else because it's warmer. You'll also be able to plant sooner in the season and go later on in the season. And there's one other thing. Yeah, so if you, depending on how you position it, you could actually be growing more delicate crops on the north side of the mound, and crops that like shade, and crops that like sun on the south side. So you're then, you're maximizing the amount of stuff you grow, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What we'll do is we'll go into it further, a little bit more further in the next podcast. But Hugo Culters is something that I'm a big fan of. I haven't actually done it myself, but if anybody wants to look into it, I remember watching Self Sufficient Me on YouTube. I'm sure you're aware of the guy, Australian guy. He's really good. You've seen some of his work?
I haven't actually, no. But yeah, they're all over the place. I mean, I'm sure he's a really cool guy. Um,
Yeah, I'm sure we
yeah,
talked about him in the past, but
maybe.
he does a good video on Hugo Coulters. If anybody wants to have a look at him, he's a really good, funny character. But yeah, people can just look it up on YouTube and just practice if you've got the space
Yeah,
to do it. But what we do, because I'm sure it's going to cut off now.
we got two.
Um,
So
2 more minutes. Yeah, yeah. If you just want to end it, John.
yeah, sure, man. Thanks very much for this, George. Just to let you guys know, at some point, we're going to do it the other way round, and I'm going to interview George about fasting.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think that's, yeah,
It goes
I
hand in hand.
yeah, you've been doing it for a long while, but I've been hearing
Yeah,
a lot more about this now. So, sometimes it takes us a little longer to kind of identify with something. So yeah, at some point I'd like to interview you and kind of put you in the hot seat, and yeah, and see what you've got to say about this, about cleansing our system and detoxifying and all that kind of stuff. So that will be interesting, man. I'm looking forward to that.
yeah, that would be great.
Thanks
We can do
everyone.
that.
Yeah,
Mm.
we'll be doing another one maybe next week.
Yeah, we'll do it next week. Yeah, and I think the one after that we can possibly do the fasting one because it goes hand in hand
mm,
with everything that we're talking about. It's very very important um,
cool.
for all levels. But thanks for
Well,
listening, everyone,
thanks everyone.
and we shall catch you. Thanks, John, and we shall catch the audience on the next one.
Excellent. Thanks, mate.
Cheers. Thanks, John. Take it easy. Bye.
Pond 5.